Let's talk about evolution in the United States. If you don't accept evolution, how can you learn biology, genetics? How do you see the issue of evolution in education?
I mean, I think there are sort of multiple questions about how Americans as a population should think about the teaching of evolution. I mean, the first thing is that I never kind of liked even the question that, or the statement that some people just don't believe in evolution. I mean, as a science, there really isn't a kind of a belief or a non-belief. There's what the facts are and whether you agree or disagree with the nature of the facts. That there is change is undebatable. Nobody's going to deny that. The question is what the source of that change is. And so for some, it's going to be God or some divine power is responsible for the change. At that point in time, science and religion has very little to say to each other because you've got one source of change and you've got another source. If the view of it being God or some divine power is having the causal effect, then there's just nowhere else to go there. So that's a kind of a stalemate. And the question is, are there any places else to move? And so here it seems to me what I want to appeal to and what I try to appeal to in an essay that I wrote for an edited volume called Intelligent Thought is to appeal to parents with children, of which I have too. And my appeal goes something like this. As educators, it seems to me that we have a responsibility to do two things. One is to give information about certain disciplines that falls clearly within the disciplinary boundaries, that says, what is this discipline about? What are the questions it asks? What are its assumptions? What constitutes a result? Right? Now, said like that, generically, that's true of art, it's true of philosophy, it's true of economics, and it's true of any of the sciences. So I want my child to go into a class on religion and learn about religion, or learn about the kinds of texts that have been written, learn about the kind of stricture, learn about the kinds of belief systems. But what I wouldn't want is for them to then say, oh, but science is another kind of religion, or it's another kind of way of knowing, without actually going into the details of the science. There could be a course about the conflict between science and religion. That's fine, as long as we're clear about what those areas, disciplines are asking. So in the same way that when my child goes and takes a course on evolutionary biology, I want my daughter to learn what are the questions in evolutionary biology. We're interested in life. We're interested in scientific evidence as evidence. So what to me as a scientist annoys me about the introduction of supernatural as evidence is that that's just not playing what we think of as our discipline. What you could say is, let's have a seminar on the nature of any kind of evidence. That would be interesting, and that should be taught, because it's very interesting. But I think what's gotten blurred to me, and this is why I think the United States is in a very bad state on education, is that it's blurring disciplines. I don't think any parent wants this. They want their child to have clear views about what science does as opposed to non-science. And then they want courses where the sciences and other areas come together. What can they solve? What can't they solve? So here's, to me, a perfect example with respect to morality. All that I will uncover as a scientist about morality is a description of how people go about making judgments. What science and me as a scientist will never do is say, look, your brain tends to think of actions as worse than omissions, so you should do this. That claim will never come from my mouth, because I am not in the position to prescribe what people should do. That's a different issue. That's where you think about what religious scripture will prescribe for people of that religious group. That's where you think about, I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican, we have different prescriptions about what our politics will tell us to do. That's a whole different layer, and that's where the scientists should be clear. They never should be prescribing.